inspired dress just in time for the 250th anniversary here in Williamsburg. So I'm going to take you on a very short trip with me down to make this dress, and then we will go ahead and have a fantastic reveal video that'll be out for you guys on the 4th of July. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So, in honor of the fact that I work at Colonial Williamsburg for the summer, I thought what would be more fun than make a very colonial themed garment, or at least 2 or 3. At this rate, it's going to be 2 or 3. While I'm here, and then I can wear them around the grounds because as an employee, I get some special perks, if you will. But today I thought, especially because it's the 250th, what character would better suit the history of the area I'm in for the summer? And I thought, well, American Girl has been super duper popular on the media for some reason this summer. So I thought it would be super duper fun to go ahead and attempt my first sackback gown. And who better than to do my childhood favorite icon, and personally a girl I took way too close to heart. Basically, I lived vicariously through her as a kid. So let's go ahead and put together my first sackback gown, which is inspired by Felicity Merriman. Which, by the way, another cool thing about Felicity is her live action movie was filmed here, and she literally lived here in all of the books. So isn't that pretty sick? Okay, so here's the thing. I am no longer interested in making long form videos, the primary focus of my channel. So instead what I'm going to do is essentially show you more of a moderated version of the dress on here, but focus most of my videos now into shorts. So if you're interested in seeing more of like a commentary on my personal interests, hobbies, etc., I would highly recommend watching the shorts right now and saying toodaloo to this video. However, if you are one of the few people who has a lot of fun watching my long form videos, go ahead and stick around and we'll see if I can scrap together a couple shots to explain things to you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. For my fabrics, I used 15 yards of this beautiful blue peacock colored broadcloth, and I ended up cutting it out using the American Duchess sackback gown. You can see it in the 18th century dressmaking book if you can't find the pattern online, though it is fairly easy to find. Hey guys, new day, new part of the project. So here's the fabric we're using for this. So I have a bolt and a half of this really beautiful cotton broadcloth, and it added up to about 12 yards for the petticoat and the dress. Now I do have this petticoat I already made for a different cosplay, which I'm honestly thinking I should just make, and then make the overdress and the stomacher for this one. Only because I have 2-ish weeks before this happens, and I'm also working a lot in the meantime. So I'll let you know as I'm progressing what I end up doing. But here are all the sewing pattern pieces cut out, and now it's time to start getting to work. I think overall, cutting all of the materials took at least 3 hours and at least an hour just for the ruffles. Once I cut everything out, I ended up laying all of it down on the floor. Ignore my feet, I'm so sorry. And this is what the back and the main bodice looks like. I ended up sewing it together off camera because I couldn't figure it out while I was filming, and I goofed it up. And then when I made some progress, I ended up simultaneously binge watching all of the Descendants movies. What can I say? I appreciate taste, you know? I will attest to the fact that I filmed most of this dress in my PJs at the wee hours of the morning. I really did not take that much time during the day, mainly because lifestyle this year is a bit funky. But here's what the back ended up looking like. Once again, ignore my feet. Sorry. Here are what the first stages of the robe look like on. I noticed right away that it was a little bit bigger than I had hoped, so I went ahead and adjusted the back a little bit. I also wasn't a huge fan of how it was bunching. It just didn't seem like it was fitting right. But as you can see, I am desperately trying to find where my pockets are. So I then progressed to making the sleeves, which are a very interesting pattern that I'm still getting used to. Then I attached them to the dress and adjusted it a little bit more by adding a couple extra pleats in the back just for some space. I then took a break from this project to go to a fun little concert just in time for the 250th, and it was called the Great American Dance Party.
I can't till the morning comes, and I know the time's just
Back to the house, I went ahead and hemmed the base of the skirt and then got started working on an egregiously large amount of ruffles. I had to hand sew these completely to the sides of the dress and it took me hours. And this was dead in the middle of a heat wave and I was just absolutely losing it. So what you're seeing right now is the coping version of me after I finished sewing it all together. The last thing I had to do was put together a stomacher, which was a lot more tedious than I had originally anticipated. I ended up adding an extra panel on the inside just to make sure it was more structurally sound and would hold the dress together, so when I would pin the stomacher in, it wouldn't pop open like it sometimes does if you don't do it correctly. Here's our stomacher. I added lace very similar to the original design of the Felicity dress. And then I added interfacing on the back and also another lining panel on the back just to make sure it looked nice. I did have to cut it down though because it ended up being way bigger than I wanted it to be. Then I attached it to the side and added eyelet holes to the other side so then I could attach it to the dress without showing any other gappage, as you can see here. Now I will have a double lace up mechanism, so I'll lace the inside and then I'll lace the outside like so, and then whatever doesn't fit correctly I will go ahead and pin. Finally, the last thing I needed to do was work on the sleeves, and I ended up doing a double layer design and then added ruffles to the top and the bottom and an extra lace to the white part of the sleeves. And there you have it. We have completely finished our Felicity dress. Here's our finished corset and here is our sleeves. And now we're gonna head outside to go ahead and film the final reveal. So if you guys enjoyed, please like, share, or subscribe and follow along for more fun videos. Thank you so much for watching. Let's go ahead and head to the final result. Well, first, actually, let's get dressed. I think it's essential to show you all the different layers that are required to make this dress look even remotely similar to the way it would have been worn originally. So instead of wearing a chemise under it, I decided to wear a tan tank top only because I was trying to stay cool and keep my timing short with getting this project together. The next layer that I put on were my stays. These are not completely historically accurate to the time frame, but they're only a decade off, so I think they're okay. I ended up lacing up my stays like a regular corset instead of doing the historical method just because it's quicker. After putting my stays on, the next thing I did was put on my petticoat, and the reason for this is it's basically a layer to protect your clothing from sweat, grime, or any other grossness. The next step before I ran out of wiggle room was to put on my historically accurate shoes and then my stockings, and I put those on really quickly before heading to the next step, which was putting on my hoops. So I ended up making these in a short, and this type of hoop is called a pocket hoop, and you could basically fill it with whatever you wanted while wearing your dress, and as long as all the pocket slits line up, it works and functions like a regular pocket. It was also at this moment that I figured out that I filmed all of this in slow-mo. So the next step is putting on my over petticoat, which is the one that will be seen on top of all these layers. Now, normally people will put on a layer on top of the hoops just so there isn't any bumps and lumps seen through the fabric, but this is a very heavy brocade, and so the likelihood of that happening is pretty low. Finally, after tying off my petticoat, it's the one stage that everyone looks forward to, which is putting on the actual dress, or the overdress, if you will. Here's the final overdress, and we are tied into the corset by the corset on top of the corset. We are corset squared, and then we attach the side panel using a mixture of ribbon and safety pins, and here's what our final dress looks like. So now let's go ahead and head outside to show you the actual final result.